It's 11 o'clock at night. The room is dim. Your baby has been fed, changed, and settled. And you are finally about to put them down. And then it happens. They burst out laughing. Not a little sound, not a squeak. A full, uncontrolled, joyful laugh, directed at the corner of the room, at the shadow on the wall, at absolutely nothing you can identify. You look around. Nothing moved. No one spoke. The ceiling is just a ceiling. But your baby is laughing like they just heard the funniest thing in the world. Most parents freeze in that moment. Some find it charming. Some find it unsettling. A lot of them grab their phone and film it and send it to someone, because it's one of those things that feels too strange and too beautiful to keep to yourself. Here is what almost nobody tells you about that moment. That laugh was not random. That laugh was not a reflex misfiring in a half-formed brain, and it was absolutely not directed at nothing. Your baby was responding to something specific, something that the science of infant perception and early neurodevelopment has been mapping with extraordinary precision over the last 3 decades. And what that research reveals about what your baby actually experiences in those moments is one of the most surprising and one of the most reassuring things you will ever learn about the first year of life. Stay with me through this entire video, because the part that matters most, the part that will change how you interpret every single one of these moments from this point forward, is not at the beginning. It builds. And the research I'm going to walk you through in the second half of this video is the kind of thing that makes parents stop mid-sentence and say, "Why has no one ever explained this to me before?" Before we go into the science, I want to ask you something directly. Has your baby ever laughed, smiled, or reacted to something you simply could not see? Maybe they were staring at a blank wall and grinning. Maybe they were gazing just past your shoulder at nothing and their whole face lit up. Maybe it happened at 2 a.m. and you felt something between wonder and a little bit of unease because it was so vivid and so completely unexplained. Leave a comment right now and tell me, where are you watching from? How old is your baby? And describe the most specific moment you can remember when your baby reacted to something invisible. What time of day was it? What were they looking at? What did their face do? I read every comment in this community, and I want to know specifically what you experienced, because what you're describing shapes exactly what I cover next. And there's a very good chance that what you just wrote in that comment is something the research has a very precise explanation for. You'll understand why by the time we reach the middle of this video. Here is something worth sitting with for a moment. When your baby laughs at what appears to be nothing, there is a pattern to it. It doesn't happen uniformly across the day. It doesn't happen randomly in every environment. If you start paying attention, really paying attention, you will notice that these episodes cluster around specific conditions: a certain quality of light, a particular angle of vision, a sound that entered the room a few seconds before the reaction, a face that appeared and disappeared. The pattern is not obvious, but it is there. And the fact that it's there is the first clue to what's actually happening inside your baby's brain in those moments. Your baby's visual system at 2, 3, and 4 months of age is not a miniature version of yours. It is a fundamentally different perceptual instrument, one that is calibrating, developing, and prioritizing in ways that evolution specifically engineered for the earliest phase of life. The range of frequencies your baby finds most stimulating, the types of contrast their visual cortex is most responsive to, the speed of movement that activates their tracking systems most powerfully, none of it is identical to what you experience when you look at that same corner of the room. Which means you and your baby can be in the exact same physical space, looking in approximately the same direction, and perceiving completely different things. This is not a metaphor. This is neuroscience, and it has a specific name, a specific mechanism, and a specific set of implications for how you understand what your baby is experiencing every hour of every day. What your baby processes visually at this stage activates neural pathways that yours would not even register. The moving dust particle that catches the angle of the afternoon light, the oscillation of a curtain so subtle it doesn't even read to your peripheral vision, the flickering shadow cast by leaves 3 rooms away. Your baby's visual cortex, still completing its myelination process, is extraordinarily sensitive to exactly these kinds of inputs. The high contrast edges, the slow rhythmic movements, the spatial frequencies that adults have long since learned to filter out as irrelevant. But here is the thing that most explanations miss. Vision alone doesn't make a baby laugh. There is something else happening. And that something else is where this gets genuinely surprising. By about 12 weeks of age, sometimes earlier in babies who have had consistent face-to-face interaction from birth, the human infant brain has already developed what researchers call a rudimentary emotional attribution system. This is the ability to link a perceptual event, something seen, heard, or felt, with an anticipated social or emotional outcome. In simpler terms, your baby is not just seeing a pattern of light and movement. They are beginning to connect that pattern with an expectation, with something familiar, with something that in their still forming model of the world carries emotional weight. And one of the earliest, most powerful associations a baby builds, documented across multiple research populations and laboratories, is the association between visual movement and human presence. Before the science goes deeper, let me tell you about Mara. Mara was 31 years old when her son Oliver was born. She had read everything: 2 books on infant sleep, a course on responsive parenting. She had notes. She was prepared. What she was not prepared for was the laughing. Oliver started doing it at around 9 weeks, always in the evening, always in the same corner of the living room, near the window. He would be calm, settled, lying on his back, and then suddenly his face would transform. His legs would kick. He would laugh with his whole body. And when Mara turned to see what he was reacting to, there was nothing. She mentioned it to her pediatrician at the 10-week visit. The response she got was warm, brief, and entirely unsatisfying. Babies do that. It's just random neural activity, nothing to worry about. Mara was not worried. She was curious. And it was that curiosity, the refusal to accept it's just random as a complete answer, that led her to start documenting times, locations, conditions, what was in Oliver's visual field. A notebook, 2 weeks of observations. What she found surprised her, and it will not surprise you once you hear what the research says next. In 2017, a research team at the Karolinska Institute in Stockholm conducted a longitudinal study following 84 infants from 6 weeks through their 6th month of life. The study's original focus was on the development of joint attention, the ability to share a focus of attention with another person. But what emerged in the data was something the researchers had not specifically set out to measure. 67% of the infants in the study showed what the researchers classified as unattended social response events, moments of clear positive affect, including smiling and vocalizations consistent with pleasure, directed at spaces or objects with no identifiable social stimulus. 67%, not occasional anecdotes, not parent reports filtered through wishful thinking. 67% of the infants, observed under controlled conditions in a laboratory setting. What the team then did was trace back through their video recordings, frame by frame, and they found something consistent across almost every one of those events. In the seconds immediately preceding the response, something had moved in the baby's peripheral or near central visual field. Not dramatically, not obviously. A mobile swaying from air current, a researcher shifting weight, a shadow changing angle as a cloud moved past the window. Something that the baby's visual system, calibrated specifically for low-contrast movement at this developmental stage, had registered as a social cue. Not because it was a person, but because it moved in a way that to a brain still learning to categorize the world, shared enough characteristics with a person to trigger the associated expectation. Think of it this way. Your baby's brain at 10, 11, 12 weeks of age is running a pattern recognition program that is being written in real time. Every face they've seen, every voice they've heard, every moment of warmth and presence they've experienced, all of it is being indexed into a working model of what the world feels like. And movement, particularly the type of slow, rhythmic, non-threatening movement that characterized every time a caregiver leaned in or a mobile turned overhead, has been indexed as socially meaningful. When that type of movement appears again, even without the face, even without the voice, even without the full context, the brain completes the pattern. It anticipates what comes next, and in anticipating it, it responds. That response is not confusion. That response is not a developmental glitch. That response is your baby's brain doing exactly what it is supposed to do. Now that you understand what the research actually found about those moments, I want to ask you something a little more specific. Drop a comment and tell me, when your baby laughs at what seems like nothing, does it tend to happen at a particular time of day? Is it more common in natural light than artificial? Does it happen more when the house is quiet or when there's background sound? And do you notice it more in certain rooms than others? This is not a trivial question. The pattern you describe, if you've been paying attention to it, is actually data. It maps precisely onto what the research shows about the specific sensory conditions that activate infant social anticipation responses. Tell me what you've noticed. I want to know. And there is one more thing I am about to explain that is going to make everything you've observed suddenly make complete sense. Don't close this video. This next part is the most important piece of everything I've covered so far. Here is what almost nobody knows, and it is the reason this video exists. The laughter your baby directs at the corner of the room, at the shadow on the wall, at the curtain moving, at what you see as nothing, is not just a response to visual stimulation. It is not just a pattern recognition misfire. It is not just the developing brain running a test sequence in idle mode. It is a communication attempt. Let me say that again, because it changes everything. At the stage when these episodes begin, typically between 8 and 14 weeks, with a strong spike around the 11 to 13 week window, your baby's brain is in the middle of one of the most intense social learning periods in human development. This is the period during which the capacity for contingent interaction is being actively constructed. Contingent interaction is the scientific term for something you already know intuitively, the experience of responding to someone and having them respond back. Contingent interaction is the foundation of early language. It is the foundation of emotional regulation. It is the foundation of secure attachment. And it depends entirely on the baby having a social partner who responds. What researchers at Harvard's Center on the Developing Child have documented across multiple cohorts and replicated in studies published in the journal Developmental Psychology is that by the time these spontaneous laughing episodes begin, the infant nervous system has already established an internal expectation of response. The laugh is not just a reaction to a stimulus. It is, at the neurological level, the first half of a call and response sequence that the baby's brain has been primed to complete. Your baby laughs. They expect something to happen next. They are waiting, with every sensory system they have, for the world to respond. And when nothing responds, when the shadow doesn't laugh back, when the curtain doesn't speak, something interesting happens in the data. The baby looks, not at the shadow, at you. Researchers who have studied these moments on high-resolution video describe a consistent behavioral sequence: spontaneous affect toward neutral stimulus, brief pause, orientation toward primary caregiver. In plain language, your baby laughs at nothing, waits, then turns and looks at you. This is not accidental. This is not coincidental. This is the neural architecture of early social cognition doing exactly what it evolved to do, using every available trigger, including ambiguous ones, to practice the call and response loop that human connection depends on. Mara had documented this, without knowing that's what it was. She went back through her notes after reading a paper on early social contingency, and she found it in entry after entry. Oliver would laugh at the corner. There would be a pause, sometimes 2 seconds, sometimes 5, and then he would turn his head and look directly at her. She had been interpreting those moments as coincidence, as her baby randomly landing his gaze on her after finishing with whatever had entertained him. But the sequence was too consistent, too predictable, too precisely timed to be random scanning. Oliver wasn't finishing with the corner. Oliver was checking whether the corner had triggered a response in the most reliable source of social feedback he had ever encountered. He was checking whether she had noticed. Your baby isn't laughing at nothing. Your baby is laughing and then waiting for you to answer. That is the sentence that changes how you see every one of these moments. Because once you understand that the laugh is an opening move, a first line in a conversation, the right response is not to smile politely and go back to what you were doing. The right response is to play your part, to answer, to close the loop that your baby's developing brain is waiting to complete. And here is what the research says about what happens in that small window of contingent response. The few seconds after your baby looks at you, when you lean in, mirror their expression, laugh back, say something, make eye contact, the density of synaptic connection in the prefrontal and temporal regions associated with social cognition and early language increases measurably in infants who receive consistent, contingent responses compared to those who do not. This is not theoretical. This is not correlation. The mechanism has been traced at the cellular level. Responding to your baby in those moments, being present, being reactive, closing the loop, directly shapes the architecture of the social brain your baby is building. You are not just playing along. You are participating in neurodevelopment. And the beautiful thing, the thing that Mara said out loud when she finally understood what those notebook entries had been recording, is that you don't need to know any of this for it to work. Millions of parents across history have leaned in instinctively, mirrored the expression, said something warm in response to a laughing baby. They didn't know the neurological mechanism. They just did what felt right. But knowing it, understanding why it works, understanding what is being built in those seconds, changes the quality of your presence in those moments. It turns a charming little mystery into something you consciously participate in. And that shift in awareness is not small. That shift in awareness is the whole point. Here is what this means for you, practically, concretely, starting tonight. When your baby laughs at the corner of the room, at the ceiling, at the curtain, at the shadow, your first move is not to look at what they're looking at. Your first move is to watch your baby's face. Wait for the pause. Wait for the turn. And when they look at you, be there. Be present. Respond. It doesn't have to be elaborate. It doesn't require a specific phrase or a technique from a book. What it requires is that you close the loop. You answer the call. Laugh back. Mirror their expression. Say something, anything, in a warm, responsive tone. Make eye contact and hold it for a moment. Let your baby feel that the thing they just sent out into the world came back to them. You can also, in the seconds before they turn, narrate what you see. Not because your baby understands the words, they don't yet, but because the sound of your voice entering the space in direct temporal connection to what just happened is itself a form of contingent response. It teaches the brain that their signal had an effect, that the world responds when they reach out, that communication works. This is one of the earliest and most foundational lessons a human being learns. And your baby is learning it right now, in those moments that looked, until about 7 minutes ago, like nothing at all. The parents who find this hardest, and I say this with complete absence of judgment because this is almost universal, are the ones who are exhausted. It's the 11th episode of this in a single evening. The baby has been up since 4 in the morning. The last thing you want to do is perform enthusiastic social engagement with a ceiling. I understand that completely, and the science understands it too. Research on contingent responsiveness does not require perfection. It does not require that every single laughing episode receives an award-winning parental response. What it requires is consistency over time. A general pattern in which your baby's social signals reliably result in social feedback. Missing 1, missing 5. Being too tired on a Wednesday at 2 in the morning to do anything other than nod gently. That does not undo anything. The architecture being built is cumulative, not fragile. What you are building is a pattern, and patterns are forgiving of imperfect moments. So on the nights when you have nothing left, just being in the room, just making soft eye contact when they turn to look, just existing as a warm and present body, that is still a response. That still counts. That is still you answering. There is one more dimension of this that I want you to understand, because it completes the picture in a way that I think is genuinely important for how you feel about these moments, not just how you interpret them. The reason your baby laughs and what you can't see is partly perceptual. They are processing their visual world through a sensory filter that registers things yours ignores. But the reason they do it with joy, with delight, with that full body abandon that makes parents stop and film it, that has a different source. Researchers who study the early emergence of positive affect in infants have documented something that contradicts one of the most common assumptions parents make about their baby's emotional life. The assumption is that joy in early infancy is primarily triggered by direct social interaction, by a face close to your face, by a familiar voice, by physical contact and warmth. That assumption is partially right, but only partially. What the data shows, across studies conducted at the Max Planck Institute for Evolutionary Anthropology, and later replicated by teams at the University of British Columbia, is that by 10 to 12 weeks of age, a significant portion of spontaneous positive affect in infants is generated not by current social contact, but by the anticipation of it. The laugh comes first. The social partner comes second. What this means is that your baby is not laughing because you are there. Your baby is laughing because they know at some deep pre-verbal level that you exist, that the world contains you, and that the pattern of warmth and response that you represent is a stable feature of their experience. A laugh at the ceiling is, in some sense, a laugh that belongs to you. Not because you caused it, but because the knowledge that you are there, the internalized presence of a reliably responsive caregiver, is the emotional substrate that made that level of joyful engagement with the world possible in the first place. A baby who has not experienced consistent, responsive, warm caregiving does not laugh at the ceiling with that quality of abandon. The research is very clear on this point. The spontaneous positive affect, the laughing at nothing, is partly a developmental milestone and partly a reflection of felt security. It is your baby telling you, in the only language they currently have, that they feel safe enough to be delighted. That is not a small thing. That is one of the most important things a child can tell a parent. And most parents never hear it, because nobody ever translated it. Your baby isn't laughing at nothing. Your baby is laughing because they trust the world. And the reason they trust the world is because of you. If you've made it this far, and especially if you've been sitting with a baby in your arms while listening to this, I want to ask you to do one thing right now. Take 30 seconds and put this in the comments. What's one thing you're seeing differently about your baby after watching this? It doesn't have to be long. It doesn't have to be articulate. Just tell me what shifted. Because every parent watching this is in some version of the same moment, trying to understand something they were told was random, trying to make meaning out of something that seemed meaningless, trying to be the kind of parent who pays attention to the right things. You're not watching this because you don't care. You're watching this because you care more than you know what to do with sometimes. And if there is another parent in your life, a partner, a sibling, a friend who just had a baby, who is wondering about these moments, who has filmed one and sent it to a group chat and gotten back nothing but heart emojis and zero explanation, share this with them. Not for the view count, because this is the kind of understanding that changes how you show up in the small moments. And the small moments are the only moments there are. The research on infant development converges on one thing above all others: the quality of a parent's presence in the ordinary, unremarkable, forgettable moments of the first year of life is what shapes the architecture of the developing brain more than any program, any technique, any curriculum. You do not need to engineer special activities. You do not need to purchase anything. You need to be there, responsive, present, and willing to laugh back when your baby laughs at the ceiling. That is the whole intervention. That is the entire evidence base, translated. There is so much more to understand about the perceptual world your baby inhabits, how they process sound, how they build the capacity for emotional regulation, how the early weeks of sensory experience lay the foundation for language, for empathy, for everything that comes after. If this video gave you something, a framework, a way of seeing these moments differently, explore the rest of what's here. There is a great deal more to know, and all of it will make you feel more equipped, more present, and more connected to the remarkable human being you are raising. Thank you for spending this time here. Now go answer your baby.